Good afternoon, everyone. Let us pray. Oh, Father and our God, we give you praise and we give you thanks for yet another day with which you have blessed us. We thank you, Lord, for our territory of the Virgin Islands and those territories gathered here. Lord, we thank you for the privilege you have given us to serve. And Lord, especially as we thank you for the diplomatic space, we pray for those who have been called to serve in this way. We pray, O Lord, that you will give them a spirit of discernment so that they will seek to understand as much as they wish to be understood. We pray for a spirit of civility so that in communicating that they too would wish to ensure understanding. And most of all, Lord, we pray for a spirit of love so that they would seek the good of others as well as the countries which they represent. We pray for this afternoon's proceedings, Lord, that it would be something that would uplift us and help us to better further our aims and objectives in the diplomatic space. All these things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
The huts of history's plains, our ancestors bled and died, but with strength and with power we overcame to restore Virgin Islands' pride. To preserve the beauty we devised a plan to obtain ownership of your precious land. Educating your people is the golden key to maintain the success of this territory. Oh, how radiant are your daughters, and how wealthy are your sons. Your riches boast your beauty, and your success is second to none. beautiful Virgin Islands, your qualities can never be denied. Oh, beautiful Virgin Islands, your qualities can never be denied.
Establish the protocol, I'd like to recognize Premier of the Virgin Islands, the Honorable Dr. Natalio D. Wheatley, Premier of Anguilla, the Honorable Cora Richardson Hodge, Deputy Premier and Minister for Environment, Natural Resources and Climate Change, the Honorable Julian Fraser, the Attorney General, the Honorable Don Smith, Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Dr. Cal Dawson, Junior Minister for Financial Services, Economic Development and Digital Transformation, the Honorable Lorna Smith, OBE, Junior Minister for Tourism and Culture, the Honorable Luce Hodge Smith, Cabinet Secretary, Permanent Secretaries and Heads of Departments, visiting delegates from Anguilla and Bermuda, other invited guests, good evening. Now that we have the formalities out of the way, how is everybody this evening? So before we start the panel discussion, I'd just like to invite our panelists to the stage. So if I could have with me the Honorable Premier, Honorable Dr. Natalio D. Wheatley. And our other panelists, the Honorable Cora Richardson Hodge, Premier of Anguilla. Thank you. So I'm going to try my hardest. You know, when you're never accustomed to being in front of the camera, I am going to absolutely try my hardest not to shake myself out of this chair. So welcome everyone, and I extend a very warm welcome to this very special panel discussion, one of the signature events of Diplomatic Week 2025. This year, we celebrate Diplomatic Week under the theme, From Island Shores to Global Doors. I thought the theme was quite fitting because it reminds us that while we come from small islands, our impact, our stories, and our spirit reach far beyond our shores. Today's discussion is being facilitated under the topic, Defining Our Place in the World, the Evolving Diplomacy of Overseas Territories. We will explore just how essential international relations and diplomacy are in helping us to build partnerships, shape our identity, and secure a resilient and sustainable future. I am Dwinelle Davis, Acting Director for the International Affairs Secretariat in the Premier's Office, and your guide through this evening's journey through the world of diplomacy. Now don't worry, I just made a promise 2 minutes ago. I'll try my best to keep it as lively as I can and try not to explore too much diplomatic speeches here this evening. I'm delighted to be joined by two distinguished panel members whose voices bring deep experience in international relations, regional cooperation, and the art of diplomacy in the 21st century. Today, I'm joined by the Premier of Anguilla, the Honorable Cora Richardson Hodge, and Premier of the Virgin Islands, the Honorable Dr. Natalio D. Wheatley. Let's please give them a warm round of applause. So I thought that I'll make the introductory session a bit fun. So before we delve into the heart of the discussion, I'll ask each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves, just about a minute, and share one fun fact about yourself or something that you have learned from your time in the public service. So don't tell us that you're the premier of any country. We want to know something about you. So I'll start with Premier Wheatley.
Well, I'm not sure if what I'm about to say persons don't know. I mean, but I am the grandson of Willard Wheatley, who is the second chief minister of the Virgin Islands. And of course, given the fact that we're speaking about diplomacy, I am proud of his accomplishments, as well as the accomplishments of all other past chief ministers and premiers and all other persons who've served in the diplomatic space. In terms of myself, what persons, depending on what rock you've been living under, you may not know, but I was a college lecturer. Actually, my boss was sitting right in the front row there, Honorable Dr. Cal Dawson. I taught English, and actually, Dwynell Davis was one of my students at one time. In fact, let's give Dwynell a round of applause as well for pulling off this diplomatic week. Is excellent opportunity. But I really don't know what to say beyond that, Dwynell. I think most persons here know most things about me.
Yeah, I was fixing my mouth to say, but Premier, you didn't tell us anything we didn't already know. but-
Exactly.
So let's turn over to Honorable Richardson Hodge.
Good evening to everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here this evening. I feel as if I'm home because we have a scrub island in Anguilla as well. And with the warm hospitality that I've received from all of you, it's a real pleasure to be here. As indicated, I am the Premier Minister of Finance in Anguilla. I also hold the portfolio of Minister of Home Affairs, Immigration, Labor, Constitutional Reform. I was first elected in 2015 to office, and at that time, I also held the portfolio of Minister of Home Affairs, Immigration, Labor, but also Education, Constitutional Affairs, Home Affairs. Human Rights. And so it is a pleasure to be here. One fun fact about me, well, we were elected to office in February of this year, so next week actually makes 9 months since we were actually elected to office, and I am sitting as Premier. One fun fact about me is that in my free time, I like to make my own skincare, night cream, lotion, soaps for myself.
Oh, interesting. Seems like get a package delivered to BBI. So I'm going to now go into the discussion and themes. This evening, the discussion will unfold in 3 segments, each focusing on different dimensions of diplomacy. First, we're going to speak about relevance, why diplomacy matters for small territories. Second, we're going to speak about representation, which is about how we engage and how we make our voices heard internationally. And third, we look to the future, where we're headed and who will take us there. Let's begin with some reflections from the panelists. So when you hear the phrase, defining our place in the world, what comes to mind for you personally or for your territory? And as tradition, Premier Richardson Hodge first.
Thank you. Well, what comes to mind in terms of diplomacy is, first of all, it's on? Yeah. First of all, being a small territory, we have about 15,000 persons. I think it's on now. It's on. It's on. And the largest issue, I think, is how do we define ourselves? How do we step out from under the umbrella of not necessarily just being an overseas territory, but being a small country, as being a small island, and how do we distinguish ourselves? So when we talk about diplomacy, it is more than just going out and advocating or speaking on behalf of what we want as a territory, but it's also listening to the concerns of the people in your country, because it is from those discussions and from those communications that inform your platform, inform what are you going to go out and advocate for. And so it starts first with understanding where your country, where the people in your country want to go, taking that and transferring it into real discussions with the powers that be, with international organizations, with the UK government, and with our counterparts in order to ensure that we achieve what we desire to achieve for our country.
Thank you very much, Premier. I absolutely love the fact that you touched on advocacy and the mandate given by the people about how much it's a lot to do with public engagement and understanding where your territory is and where they would like to advance to. Now, Premier Wheatley, same question for you.
Yeah, well, just
repeat?
yeah, please, you can repeat it once.
When you hear the phrase defining our place in the world, what comes to mind for you personally or for your territory?
What comes to mind for me when it comes to defining our place in the world is that our ability to be able to define our place in the world didn't just happen overnight. We had many individuals who fought for the right for us to be able to define ourselves in an international space. Because the act of defining ourselves is an act of self-determination. As we all would know, we are a territory of the United Kingdom, and there was a time when we had no international identity or personality. We were simply a part of someone else's empire. But it's through the acts of self-determination, through the act of having our own legislators, like we did in 1950, which we celebrate this year, 75 years of that, the act of being able to have a ministerial form of government where we elect ministers who have particular responsibilities. It's the act of having a chief minister, now a premier, that's through negotiation, through sacrifice, through struggle, are able to define the functions and responsibilities of a chief minister or a premier, to have responsibilities which were formerly had by the governor or the United Kingdom, that they possessed. And the act of being able to transfer those responsibilities, which were once the United Kingdom's or the governors, to elected government in the form of a premier or chief minister. And perhaps one day we'll get to the point, we hope, that we'll even be able to have a leader of government who can appoint a foreign minister. And of course, by the time you get to that point, of course, you'll be much far advanced. But the act of defining yourself in the world is an act of survival for us. Because if not for those individuals who are able to depart from our island shores and go to places like Beijing, go to UN meetings and fight on behalf of the BVI, go to Brussels, go to London, or go to Latin America, go to our OECS meetings and CARICOM meetings, and to be able to represent the interests of the people of the Virgin Islands abroad, we would not be where we are today as a very successful small island developing state with a very good income per capita and well respected in many quarters in the world. I have to say to you, I sit here on this panel, but I certainly defer to many in the audience who have much more experience and knowledge than I do. And when I travel, and persons who I might have met for the first time, they are mentioning to me names like Kedrick Pickering and Lorna Smith and all of the other persons who have served abroad, and it gives me a sense of great pride to know that the Virgin Islands is so well respected abroad. So the act of self-definition for me is an act of self-determination, and it gives me a great sense of pride the way that we have been able to represent ourselves.
So I was going to round up by saying that, Premier, I love that you actually based your answer in the literature, because you started off talking about self-determination and noting that we're still on the UN's list of non-self-governing territories. That's a very important aspect in our journey in terms of defining ourselves, whether the territory may be BVI or Anguilla or Bermuda or whoever else. So we're gonna get right into segment number one. And segment number one is under the subtopic, Understanding the Global Relevance of Overseas Territories. Now, when some people hear about international relations, they imagine probably suits, they probably imagine going to different summits, they think about long communiques that are drafted, they probably think about a lot of travel, they think about receptions, and the list goes on. But for us, it's really about how we advocate for our people, how we open doors to opportunity, and how we tell our stories representing ourselves on the global stage. So I would like for us to explore that a bit more together. So question number one, and I'll pose this question to Premier Whitley. Why does international relations and diplomacy matter for small territories like ours in today's fast-changing world?
Well, let's take a look at some very important issues that affect us as small island developing states. One is climate change. We're nearing the end of the hurricane season now, and we've had some very near brushes as it pertains to direct impacts from hurricanes. But we know what happened in 2017. We were devastated by 2 Category 5 hurricanes. We were also devastated by a flood. And we've seen with increasing frequency weather events that have the potential to impact us negatively. Now, climate change is not something of our own making, of our own doing. In fact, Caribbean region, I believe, contributes less than a percentage of 1% of global emissions to the climate crisis. And of course, we are disproportionately impacted by climate change. And those persons who, those nations who are the heavy contributors to climate change are the big industrial nations on the planet. And of course, we have a responsibility to get together with other nations in the world who are also disproportionately negatively impacted by climate change, and advocate for our own best interests and advocate to the very same nations who are the ones causing climate change. Advocate for things like climate justice. Advocate for things like climate finance for those who are whether experiencing loss or damage from these impacts. Advocating for finances to be able to adapt our territories to the impacts of climate change, or to be able to mitigate against the negative effects of climate change. And that's only one example is climate change. We also know financial services, which is an area where we trade globally. This is one of our main pillars. It's responsible for 60% of our government revenue and countless jobs in the BVI, not just in the BVI, but around the world. This is a global industry, and we cannot possibly maintain our position or even gain our position or maintain our position if we were just sitting at home. We have to be able to travel. Like we heard last night that Honorable Lorna Smith led the first delegation to Beijing. It is necessary to be able to meet industry practitioners, to meet government officials. Earlier this year, we made a trip to Asia. We went to Shenzhen, we went to Hong Kong. And I was very impressed with the reception we got. It was very clear that the Chinese, who are, you know, a global superpower and recognized by many to be eventually the leading superpower in the world, based on their growth and development, that we were so well respected in China. You know, I heard it, but to see it with my own eyes, I would say was truly an amazing experience, and not only to be able to go to China and to be so well received, but to go to Malaysia after that, and Malaysia having so much respect for us based on our financial services industry, which was well known to them in Malaysia. So financial services is an area where really diplomacy matters. And in fact, for quite a lot of time, a lot of our diplomacy was defined by our engagement in financial services. And the last area I would say that it really matters for us has to do with politically. We went through somewhat of a crisis in 2022 when, of course, we had some level of political instability due to, of course, the situation with Andrew Foy, as well as the recommendation to suspend democracy in the Virgin Islands by Sir Gary Hickenbottom. And of course, that order in council, that draft order that was held in reserve, that if invoked would have suspended democracy, was a real threat to all the progress we had made over the years. And it was partly because of diplomacy, because of our relationship with the OECS and CARICOM, where they were able to stand up for us. And we thank our overseas territory colleagues who stood up for us as well. OT Caribbean Caucus issued a statement. We advocated at the United Nations. We advocated to whomever would listen, really. And we worked, and I have to give great recognition to my special envoy, Benito Wheatley, who conducted a great deal of diplomacy during that period, to our office in London, Tracy Bradshaw, who was very much engaged, Kedrick Malone, who is a governance reform manager and a former director at the London office, who assisted with that diplomacy, the Premier's office under the leadership of P.S. Stout Igwe. And even the United States Virgin Islands issued a statement in support of us. And, after 3 years later, through tact, through great efforts and hard work, we were able to have that, the decision made for that order in council to be revoked.
Okay. So I just want to piggyback. That's quite a mouthful, and I think it's very great insight. But one thing I wanted to stress on was the topic you touched on when you talked about financial services and it being our livelihood, and we need to go and we need to meet. But I think one of the things that's really important for you to stress on that point is it's very important for us to put our perspective on the table, especially in the financial services industry. The UK and other players, we're viewed as a tax haven. And I could relate a specific example when I was in university and it was an introductory day. I said I was from the Virgin Islands, and my lecturer said to me, "Oh, you're from a tax haven." And I said, No, I'm from a company in cooperation jurisdiction. There's a big difference. So I think it's quite important that we continue to engage in the diplomatic space so that we can tell our perspectives, and our perspectives are not told for us. But I recognize that we're running on this topic too long, so I just asked Premier Richardson Hodge if she would like to contribute anything to this part of the discussion.
Yes, certainly. Thank you for that. The question that I would ask is, who will fight for us if we do not fight for ourselves? Who will stand up for us if we do not stand up for ourselves? And many persons may remember Anguilla, 1967, where we would have had our Anguilla Revolution. And Angola was known as the mouse that roared. And that is because of the issues that were taking place in the country at that time. And so Angola had to stand up for itself and had to say, well, look, this is not what we want. This is not working for us, and we need to have a different structure. And so it is coming out of that that today we see where we are Angola, St. Kitts, and Nevis as separate, as opposed to the confederation that we were at that point in time. And so I say that to bring us forward, that we are constantly in a space where we have to fight for ourselves, where we have to deliver our views, where we have to advocate for our rights as jurisdictions. And so while it is that we all have our individual particularities, and we're all distinct in some way or the other, but overarchingly, there are things that are consistent that apply to every one of us. And I take, for instance, the mention of climate change. We in Angola too, and generally this region, we are suffering from the effects of global warming, from the effects of rising sea levels, and from the effects of, we have less land mass as a result of erosion over the years. And so these are issues that impact us. And so we have to advocate very strongly for them, for other countries, larger countries, to understand that their actions impact us as small jurisdictions. Financial services is also an aspect, although not to a greater extent in Angola. But one of the key things that I think for us in Angola is we have to look at is how do we continue to expand our visibility, where not only the UK, but international organizations, other countries are able to look at Angola and say, well, look, these are the issues that concern Angola. These are the factors that we need to take into account. One of those, for instance, is in the case of Brexit. Many persons would recall when Brexit would have taken place, Angola had to advocate for its particular situation, wherein Angola is actually on the border of two European countries, French and Dutch St. Martin. And so as a result of the Brexit situation, there was a very real issue with regard to whether or not Angola will continue to be able to access St. Martin, because many persons in Angola shop in St. Martin. We travel internationally through St. Martin, the Dutch side. And so we had to advocate so that the UK government understood that that decision was done without consultation of the overseas territories, and those decisions had a negative impact. And so we had to come to the table in terms of how we were going to be able to maneuver. The other aspect with that as well would have been European Union funds that we would have benefited from, and as a result of that decision, those funds were no longer available to us. And so these are issues that have impacted Angola. So we see that the decisions that are made sometimes in the wider context do not take into consideration our small islands, us as overseas territories. And so we have to make our positions known and advocate for what is right for the people of our territories.
Indeed, very insightful. We indeed do have to speak on our own behalf, and we can't allow other persons to do it for us, because the reality is it would never be done justice if we allow other persons to continue to put our perspectives forward. So I'm going to go to question number 2, and Premier Wheatley touched on this in his opening, so I'm going to ask Premier Richardson this question. What does defining our place in the world mean for your territory? Is it about influence? Is it about identity? Is it about survival?
I would say it's all three. And I would say that at the end of the day, there are 3 parts to this. One is we have to ensure that we engage with the UK government so that they understand our requirements and they understand what we need to obtain from the partnership that we are to have between the UK and the overseas territories. Two, we have to engage with our counterparts, with our regional counterparts, our sister overseas and brother overseas territories, but also our brothers and sisters in the independent countries as well, because there is a safety factor in terms of a harmonized approach when it comes to certain issues that impact us. And so entities, organizations like CARICOM, like the OECS, UCATO, these are all helpful because they collate all of the ideas and the issues that are consistent among us and ensure that our voices collectively are heard on the larger scale, on the larger stage. And the third aspect is to ensure that we continue to promote ourselves as individual territories. And so each one of us, and we have mentioned that we have our peculiarities, but we also have those individual aspects that make us strong as independent territories. And so we have to focus on those areas. We have to develop those areas, and we have to make it known that these are the things that separate us from other countries, but also are used to enhance our development in our countries. Thank you.
Premier, would you like to add anything else?
No, I think Premier Richardson had said it very well, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay. So we've spoken a lot about advocating for ourselves, and when I was in school, especially in my political modules, when they talked about soft power and hard power, I never could understand what these people are always talking about. But what I want to delve into right now is I want us to get the conversation going about how we think soft power, whether it's our culture, whether it's our tourism, whether it's our people, how that type of engagement helps us in the diplomatic space. How does that help us to advance our interests further?
It might be helpful for you to define soft power and hard power.
So hard power is usually military assets, using military assets, but soft power, it's more, for lack of better words, softer, but it's more skill than it is about using hard and fast draconian rules. So it's about the way that you engage, the tactics that you use to engage. And I'm trying to delve into how might our tourism product or even our culture, how we use those things to purport ourselves on the world stage so that people take a liking to us as territories, or that they're able to advance or help us advance our interests as well. So perhaps ask Premier Wheatley. He started to
Yeah, well, just to say, as you know, small island developing states and even as territories, all we have really is soft power, because of course we don't have, you know, I guess access to those assets of military assets, etc. I mean, we just look at the situation that we face now with the situation between the United States and Venezuela. And you look at CARICOM, you know, CARICOM obviously cannot stand up to the United States or stand up to Russia from a military standpoint. But what we do have is our ability to be able to negotiate. We have our diplomacy. We have our contacts. And it's interesting because Guyana and Venezuela has a well-known conflict as it pertains to territorial claim, Essequibo. And you also have another example, which is Haiti, which is facing a situation where there are gangs which have overrun the government there, and there's been a collapse of the government, so to speak, there. And with those situations, CARICOM has played a role of mediation between various entities. And you even see places like France, United States, big nations in the world looking to CARICOM for guidance. I've attended CARICOM meetings where you have high-level officials from France and the United States come to speak to CARICOM about solving the Haitian crisis. And it says to me that despite the fact that they have all the military assets and they're one of the biggest superpowers in the world, CARICOM was playing a significant role just because CARICOM as a diplomatic entity was seen as a means of being able to bring different parties together and to reach agreement on a political level, which was essential on solving the Haitian crisis. So all we have is soft power. And of course, as you said, it's not just the negotiation, it is not just the diplomacy, it is also forming relationships with persons even before you know you need those relationships. And that's the importance of the cultural exchange. That is the importance of ensuring that you're well liked, you get to know persons, you go to the receptions, you meet the right people, you shake the right hands. Some persons think these receptions are frivolous. No, these receptions are helping you to form relationships. Sometimes that's the way that you're going to get to know the persons who work in the diplomatic space for various nations and territories. And so it's extremely important for us to be engaged, to be around the table. I can't remember who said it, but I heard it at Robert McTavius's funeral. It might have been Robert McTavius himself who said it. It's better to be around the table than to be on the menu. So we have to be around the table. We have to shake the right hands. We have to meet the right people because you never know when those relationships will be able to benefit you.
So, and I just want to also piggyback on the relationships topic, because something I like to illustrate to people is that in this space, it's not the mountains and the buildings that carry on relationships. It's the people, and to me, you could link in it to, relationships in your everyday life with people and different things. But, sometimes you walk into a room and you don't even recognize that you're offending somebody, and just because you've offended them, that doesn't necessarily get you far in the diplomatic space. So even in our everyday lives, it's the relationship building. And I think when people travel and, not necessarily on government business, but just personally, you're always a representative of your country. Most times when you go away, most times people haven't even heard of the BVI, and just from your personality, from the way that you embrace them, you've definitely developed a connection that could help you sometime later down the road. I'd like, Premier Hodge, would you like to add?
Sure, thank you. I absolutely concur with the statements made by Premier Wheatley. I think that, under our Anguilla Constitution, security lies under the portfolio of the governor. And so, likewise, when it comes to external relationships, etc., first and foremost, we have to rely, pursuant to our constitutional provisions at this point in time, on the governor to establish these initial contacts, etc. So I do agree that what is within our power is the soft power, the ability to communicate, the ability to advocate, and to take what you said, Ms. Davies, to a very basic level. As persons who reside in small territories, Anguilla, of course, has a population of 15,000, which is less than BVI. But you establish relationships every day. If you go to pay your electrical bill, you're engaging in discussions with the person, with the cashier. You go to the grocery store, and they'll know you by name, and they'll ask you, how's your mother, and how's your family members, etc. There are times when you're in a crunch, you can pick up the phone and call someone and say, look, can you rush this through for me, etc., etc. We do that every day. And that is because we've established relationships with those persons. Imagine where, in a small country such as ours, you go into places, but you don't know the people. Everything is arm's length. It's a different world, and that exists outside in a larger scale, where you can be in an apartment complex and have no idea who your neighbor is. May have never seen persons or communicated with them. You stand in an elevator every day and you have no idea who these people are. That's not the kind of relationships that we have in overseas territories, I think throughout the Caribbean as a whole. And so because of that, we understand the need to be able to ensure that we have relationships with the people that we meet every day. So broaden that perspective to international organizations, to persons in the UK, people who we have never met, people who we are meeting for the first time, but we want something, we want to be able to advocate our position. We want to say, look, this is what we need as a territory. This is what we need as a country. And so you must be able to put that position forward so that you can achieve the outcome that you need. And so it's a very probably simple way of putting it, but I just wanted to bring it home to many persons that we do it every day. The idea of diplomacy, the idea of advocacy, but we do it with a smile.
Thank you very much. I think it's very clear that diplomacy is really about positioning. It's about relationships, it's about partnership, and it's about presence. So with that being said, let's take this momentum into the next segment, and we're going to look at how we actually show up in the world. So segment number 2 is we look at how overseas territories represent their interests and make their voices heard on the global stage. For small territories, it's often about working smarter, not necessarily louder. It's about building relationships, using networks, and finding creative ways to influence regional and global agendas. So let's consider, and this is a question that I'll pose to both panelists, what does effective international engagement look like for us? So I'll allow Premier Richardson Hodge to take this on first.
So I just want to take us back to the days of COVID-19 when we couldn't travel. But we still had to engage with, and we would have had virtual meetings, etc. And so the idea of digital diplomacy is a very real thing. It allows us, even though we may be miles apart, oceans apart, we are able to connect and communicate with each other by way of social media, by way of Microsoft Teams and Zoom calls, etc. So that we are able to advocate in that sense. So I believe that all of us would much prefer the face-to-face. I'm a person that I believe in face-to-face contact. To me, it's even more real. But while face-to-face contact is real, is I suppose in my view, it has the ability to be able to resonate greater than if you are by way of social media or on a Zoom call, etc. And we saw that because in the aftermath of COVID-19, we all started to have these conferences and these meetings again, such as why we are here this evening. And that is because within the sidelines, within the margins of the meetings, you are able to establish communications and discussions and have meetings and be able to impart your view as a representative of an overseas territory. And so I would say that in-person communications is important. Digital diplomacy allows us to connect when we do not have the ability, and even this morning as well, when some of the other premiers from the OTs were able to join us via Zoom because they could not be here in person, and it allowed them to be part of the conversation and part of the decision-making process. So I would say that those two aspects are very important for us as we move forward. Thank you.
Premier Wheatley?
Yeah, effective international engagement for me looks like, the way in which I'll speak specifically about the Virgin Islands. We have been able to position ourselves on regional and global entities, and our voice is being heard. I'll give you a couple examples. So we have the CDCC, which stands for the Caribbean Development and Cooperation Committee, and that's a committee of ECLAC. The BVI currently is serving as vice chair of the CDCC. That's not just for associate members, that's for all members. And then not just that, ECLAC, which is the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. The BVI is also vice chair of the entire ECLAC right now. And that's an enormous accomplishment for a territory of 30,000+ people. You know, ECLAC would comprise all of those nations in Latin America and the Caribbean. You know, you're talking about, you know, Brazil, you're talking about Argentina, you're talking about, you know, big Dominican Republic, you know, all of these big nations, and the Virgin Islands is vice chair. Respected, has a voice, able to participate in decision making. That means that we are being effective in our diplomacy. That means that we are well positioned. And I can remember throughout the years, not just now, but throughout the years, the Virgin Islands serving as chair of this or vice chair of that, hosting conferences, being keynote speaker, being a key decision maker in the room. When you are having the discussions in the room, BVI making interventions, and those interventions matter. You know, that for me is effective international engagement. That is diplomacy. And I have seen time and time again the BVI punch above its weight. And I see, you know, for me, I'm amazed, not just with the BVI, but all the overseas territories, Anguilla, Cayman Islands, Bermuda, Turks and Caicos, the types of tables that we sit at, the type of circles where we engage. You know, you go to the Middle East, and overseas territories have a presence in the Middle East. You know, I went to, as a part of a UNESCO conference, I went to Dubai. And, you know, when you are in these circles, you are engaging with, you know, we went to the royal family's palace. And I was met by a member of the royal family at the airport. You are engaging on a high level. You know, we are next year going to go to India, and most likely will be received by a high-level government official in India. We met high-level government officials in China. You know, so the BVI has a lot to be proud of. The fact that we were in even a fraction of the resources that other persons have. We don't have all the diplomatic postings that other nations have. We, you know, have just a few persons like Donnell, you know, before that, Nijan and others, just a handful of people working in a particular area, but yet we have been able to do a great deal with a small bit of resources.
Thank you so much, Premier. I just want to go a bit further, and I want to talk about participation, especially like in the regional organizations. If you could talk a bit more about like our participation in CARICOM or participation in OECS and ACS, and what that type of intentional engagement looks like.
That has been a revelation for me. As we know, you know, there's a lot of people in the world. You know, it's probably over 8 billion people in the world now. And you are a nation of 35,000 people, less than Anguilla, you know, 15,000. How do you engage with these big powers just as a small territory? I think that's the importance for us of being a part of a block, larger blocks. If you see big European countries feel as though for them to make it in the world, they have to be a part of a bloc. You know, how much more would someone, you know, a territory like the BVI have to be a part of a bloc to be able to really matter in this world? You have China. China is over 1 billion people. India over 1 billion people. You know, United States of America over 350 million people. You have the European Union, which itself is a big bloc, which is, you know, probably over 1 billion people or so. I'm not sure quite what the population of the whole European Union is together. But these are very powerful nations in the world. And to be able to survive, you have to be able to trade with them. And if you want to be able to engage with them, they're not going to just engage with you as a little small territory, a small island developing state most times. And what we've been able to see with CARICOM, mostly, to a lesser extent OECS, what we've been able to see is that CARICOM has been able to engage big nations. CARICOM has had a Brazil CARICOM summit. They've been able to have a CARICOM African summit where they engage with the African Union. CARICOM has been able to have high-level meetings with the United States. I went to CARICOM meetings, you know, and you would see they would be meeting with, I think one point met with Kamala Harris, met with representatives from the Trump administration, Marco Rubio. When I was there, met with Secretary Blinken, met with high-level United States officials, and we can just go down the line. You know, at one meeting, I was engaging with the then Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. You know, how will I have the opportunity to speak and meet with the Canadian Prime Minister just from being from a very small territory? So CARICOM and OECS opens up these opportunities for us. And just like Premier Richardson had said, we share a lot of similarities. We share a lot of common challenges, you know, climate change, the vulnerability of our economies, you know, even the same situation we face now with drug trafficking, gun smuggling, now potential militarization of the Caribbean Sea. All of these are common challenges that we faced. And of course, it makes sense for us to be able to face those challenges head on together.
So I'm gonna just pivot a little bit, and I'm going to go into talking about engagement and what real tangible benefits and opportunity looks like. So I'd like to give Premier Hodge Richardson an opportunity to speak on this one. But when we're finished, Premier, I would just like you to use the example with our COI process and the support that both CARICOM and OECS were able to render to us in that regard. Right. So I'll start off with Premier Richardson Hodge. If she could just share with us an example where engagement led to a real tangible benefit for the people of Anguilla.
Thank you. So I would have made mention earlier in terms of the negotiations that took place post-Brexit and the need for the UK government to have recognized that the actions that were taken without the involvement of the overseas territories had significant impacts. And so we were able to lobby to put our position forward. And coming out of that, we were able to ensure that our ease of access, because St. Martin Anguilla is similar to BVI Anguilla, where we have so many family connections and ties that it's almost as if we, although one is French, one part is French, and the other part is Dutch, we all see each other as one family. And so it would have been unimaginable for Anguilla to have required to obtain visas to enter into St. Martin, given that they're just 18 minutes by boat from Anguilla. And so that was a success story. Another example I can give you is certainly in terms of the evolution as to how our students are being treated in the UK. There was a point in time where they were considered to be international students and had to pay international rates. Today, as a result of the lobbying from all of the OTs collectively and even individually, our children today are treated as home students and with the rate of home students. And of course, there are some challenges that we're currently experiencing that we have to continue to work through. But that is certainly another example as to how we have been very effective in terms of lobbying for our causes.
Okay, thank you. Prabhat?
Okay, I can speak a little bit about the COI, but before I go to the COI, I want to give a couple other examples of where we had some tangible benefits as a result of our engagement. One was a recent one. It has to do with situation that we faced with United States Virgin Islands, where we had rise in fees to be able to, for the charter boats to be able to enter. And persons would recognize that there was a lot of tension around that particular issue. You played a role in that, Ms. Davis, in terms of engaging with the United States Virgin Islands and speaking on the issue. And we would know over the years, okay, we would have had challenges, particularly as it pertains to around fishing and charter boats between the United States Virgin Islands and the BVI. But over the years, we have been able to establish a forum and a mechanism to be able to engage with the United States Virgin Islands to ensure that we can solve challenges such as those that spring up from time to time. And recently we were supposed to have a friendship day, but unfortunately because of the weather, it wasn't able to happen. But, you know, I have to salute my grandfather again. You can tell I'm proud of my grandfather. I think he was chief minister at the time when we had Friendship Day for the first time. And then to follow that Friendship Day with the Virgin Islands, Inter-Virgin Islands Council as a forum to be able to engage. And so we were able to sit across the table from Governor Bryan, explain the situation, put the facts on the table, engage with, of course, with resolve, but also with great respect. You know, also with abiding by principles of fairness, being very transparent. And we were able to make it through that issue, which is, I think, a testament to the diplomacy that we engaged in.
But I think one thing that we should absolutely mention here is that although we talk a lot about relationship building and how diplomacy is an art and it's a skill, you always or you definitely get in those situations where it's as if you and your husband have a disagreement and I have to find a way to tell this man, stop humbugging me up in a very polite way so that we could continue to live as partners, you know. And I think that's very pivotal in this specific discussion that the Premier is having about the conversation with the United States Virgin Islands, just because of our geographic lines and how much of our livelihoods intertwine in this regard. I just let Premier just wrap up again regarding the CARICOM OECS and the COI stuff.
Well, you know, the COI process, I would say, has really showed the value of the relationships that we have. And really, I have to say the OECS was extremely strong support for us. And having the OECS block within CARICOM was also very important for us. But without hesitation, the OECS, you know, stood by our side, issuing a statement, which was a very strong statement on our behalf. And it went out internationally, and it did make some waves. On the CARICOM level as well, we had some heads of government who went as far as calling the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. We had heads of government who called the Foreign Secretary, and they nearly called King Charles as well. So when you have persons like that who are willing to step out on your behalf and engage that for you, you know, that's what you call true solidarity. And that is why it's important for us to show up at the meeting. Some persons curse us sometimes for traveling too much or something like that. But if you only show up at the meetings when you need something, persons are not going to take you seriously. You have to show up consistently. You have to show that you're committed to the cause. And then when persons recognize that you're serious and you're committed, they will stand by your side when you are needed. And that's why we have to be consistent.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to be authentic, and we have to engage with these organizations, because you never know when you're going to need friends.
Exactly. The field is definitely about the same reciprocity and stressing about your advocacy and the way you show up, again, the way you represent yourselves. If you don't show up, if you don't represent yourselves, people are not going to take you seriously. And when people don't take you seriously, you have no friends to run on. You have no friends to lean on, actually. So I'm very mindful of the time, and I'll just wrap up the discussion on segment number 2, and I will transition into our final segment, which looks to the future. And I'm quite interested in hearing the discussions on the future of diplomacy, because as I sit here as the Acting Director for International Affairs, it's something that I think almost everybody in this room has heard me bang on about international affairs needs staff. We need people who study international relations. We need all of these things. So I'm very excited to have this section talking about the next chapter of overseas territories diplomacy, what it looks like, and how do we ensure that the next generation is ready to take the baton on. So I'll start off this one, and I'll just turn back over to Premier Hodge-Richardson. By 2030 or 2050, what do you think diplomacy for overseas territories would look like?
Thank you. Well, first and foremost, I would have mentioned the digital diplomacy, and I do believe that that will continue into the future. We are in an age where we have artificial intelligence, we have a lot of advancements, and so what I think is important is for us to prepare our people. We have a number of young persons who are in the space. They may not be recognized. They may not have the support of the various governments. And I think what we need to do is to focus on where we want to go and what we want to achieve for our countries. And certainly in the case of international diplomacy, we have to prepare our young people, because they are the next generation. They are the future leaders, and they're the ones that are going to take us forward. And so it's very important that we prepare the groundwork for them. We provide opportunities for training, scholarships, attachments in other jurisdictions. And what I like that I see with the overseas territories is that we have certainly been opening the doors in terms of the exchange of communication and information. And so currently we have a young person in our Attorney General's chambers who is actually attached to the AG's chambers in Bermuda for, I think, a period of 6 months. And so that is the transfer of knowledge, the ability to be able to utilize our relationships amongst ourselves to be able to enhance each other. And so the focus on the youth, on our young people, the education of our young people, providing financing opportunities, and even if it's not a 4-year scholarship, certificate courses, etc., to be able to ensure that we are prepared for the future. Thank you.
Okay, so I would just like to piggyback and say it is knowledge transfer, the young person being attached to the AG chambers, but it also goes into the same realm of diplomacy and international relationships, because that would go directly to your bilateral relationship with Bermuda.
Exactly, thank you.
Premier Wheatley, would you like to add anything?
As it pertains to where we see diplomacy in 2030 or 2050?
2050, yeah.
Well, I mean, in 2050, I hope you're no longer overseas territories. I certainly hope that that is the case. In 2030, actually, right now we are in the House of Assembly agreeing on negotiating position with the United Kingdom for constitutional advancement, constitutional reform. We have a few persons who were a part of that 2007 constitutional negotiation, including current Deputy Premier. I'm grateful who is able to provide that level of institutional knowledge for me as a young person, as well as Lorna Smith as well was a part of that as well. Um, the in 2030, I'm hopeful after a successful negotiation with the United Kingdom that a number of the areas which are currently delegated to the territories will be devolved. And I'm grateful for the journey because those who are more knowledgeable and experienced than me will have to tell me what the situation was before 2007 with the 1976 Constitution. You know, I would suspect it would have not even been delegated at that particular time, but perhaps maybe you would have, you probably would not have had entrustments and things like that time. You would have had to seek permission each and every time, perhaps. So that 2007 Constitution certainly would have been an advancement on what existed before. And then hopefully for this 2027 Constitution, those matters would be fully devolved to the overseas territories. We're talking about matters, matters regarding the OECS or CARICOM or financial services or tourism or the ACS or the United Nations, various agencies, etc. That those things would be devolved to us. And we're hopeful now that we would be able to have a bigger global footprint, that we'd be able to establish a presence in places where we don't have a presence now. Of course, we have an Asia office, which, you know, we gave Honorable Lorna Smith a Pioneer Award for establishing that office under the administration, the Orlando Smith administration at the time. We Honorable Ralph O'Neill bought that building in London, and of course, we're able to establish that office under the Smith administration as well. We have a relationship with OECS and CARICOM. The question is where exactly we'd want to establish our presence moving forward. We've spoken a lot about the Middle East, for instance. I know at one time we were planning a big trip to Africa. It would be nice to put that back on the agenda as well to see how, from a financial services standpoint, how we can spread the use of our product and explore different markets. I know we're exploring markets in Latin America. We have great interest in Brazil, etc., and other places in Latin America. I see the future as being very bright for Virgin Islands diplomacy and Virgin Islands engagement. But I agree with you, Donnell. We need more persons to become interested in the field. And we often complain that, there are not enough opportunities here or there for Virgin Islanders. But I know quite literally, Donnell, you are trying very hard to find persons who are interested in this particular space. And even with the few positions that we give you, you try to recruit persons. But I just want to let those persons in the public know that this is a valid space to be able to study. I remember when you were in college and we was discussing actually what person's aspirations were. You did say you were interested in international relations and politics. And true to form, you are now an acting director of international affairs in a very prominent position, hosting your first diplomatic week. So if persons study the subject area of there are opportunities for you in this particular area, and it's exciting opportunities. You have being able to serve in the London office like Miss Tracy Bradshaw is doing right now, or be able to serve in the Hong Kong office. You know, you know, there constant opportunities in those offices as well, and who knows what other offices that will open or we need somebody to be posted. So it's a very valid area to be able to study, and we hope persons would be inspired by this panel discussion to study to study and to be able to work in this area.
No, I believe the premier were reading my script from over there. Because at this point, I was about to ask him, or him and her, well, tell me, how do we attract young people to be interested in this field? Because I think people generally go towards more traditional degrees, or they gravitate towards the arts. And that's why last night in my opening remarks, I made that specific comment to say, you know, your traditional skills are definitely much needed over here. The field is very much more than the receptions that you see. It's a lot of preparation. And until I started working in international affairs, I never recognized how much skills you need to have to even coordinate a function. You used to think, people think like, oh, I could just get up and do it. But no, it's not. It's a lot of protocoling, just saying, oh, put this person here, put this person there. These are all things that emanate from the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. And it's a way that we go about doing these things. Takes high level of skills, patience as well. So I just use this pitch to also say that if anybody is interested, or anybody at the stage where they're trying to have a change in their career, perhaps their skills may be suited to international relations and diplomacy. And as an overseas territory, because we're not very much in our infancy, but we're at that place where we're trying to get out of that stage and continue on our journey of self-determination. We actually need all the skills and help that we can get, so that we could get to a place where, as a people, we decide what we want for ourselves.
And let me just say, you asked about how do we attract young persons. No doubt about it, it's a lot of hard work. I think you would be able to attest to that, and some of the other young persons who are in the space. It's a lot of hard work. But there are perks and there are benefits. You get to meet a lot of different people, new people. You get to travel. You know, sometimes the travel can be onerous and burdensome.
Very. I'd just like to add here, when people hear travel, they think you get a vacation to go to whatever country you're in. And I am going to sit on this stage and say to everybody, it is no vacation. Oh, trust me, it is no vacation. It is getting to a specific country. You don't even get to experience customs and immigration in the regular way. It's getting to a different country, and most times you don't get to experience that country. You see the inside of a meeting room, and then the very next day after your meeting has concluded, you're back on a flight, you leave. After you've been in a meeting room from, let's say, 7 in the morning to 5 at night, they're inviting you to receptions to socialize and make connections. And I will say, there is no reception that I have been to that I actually wanted to go. You had me in that meeting room all day, and I wanted to go back to my hotel room and rest. But because it's the field of the work, you tough up and you go and you socialize and you try to build relationships for the country. So, Premier.
Can I just say that our boat leaves at 5:30 a.m. tomorrow morning? So I understand.
Yeah. So, if Premier Whitley, if you have anything to add, I'll just wrap up the session.
Yeah, just to say that it's, I would say, incredibly rewarding area, and there are lots of perks and lots of benefits that could help to develop you as a person. It helps you to be more globally minded, more well-rounded as an individual, and it can even prepare you for other very high-level careers and positions in life.
Thank you very much to the panelists. So I'm going to deviate from my script a little bit, and I'll just ask if anybody in the audience would like to ask a question or two. I'd permit a question or two.
and maybe not even just a question, but maybe just a reflection or a comment, because we have persons in the room who are very experienced in the particular area, and even if they could answer a question, I think it would be useful.
Thank you. Thanks for that very insightful panel discussion. I want to say you need to like the evening and smile broadly and, look very enthusiastic, but I know what you mean. I just wanted to speak to the point that Premier Richardson Hodge spoke to in terms of how to get more persons, young persons involved. And I want to give an example. I touched on it last night, but I didn't really, because of the time, I didn't really expand on it. As you yourself as moderator, Dwinelle, said, it's work, it's hard work. And I have to say that Dr. Ricardo Wheatley in Hong Kong, he has a school. It is not a school, it's an office, but he does things. Here is one of the graduates. This young lady here is one of the graduates, and he makes you work. He makes you work. Two persons, one person from my office, two persons from my office, one who's now back with me, and I can see the results. Sometimes I say she's my brain, because I just have to say, well, do this, and it's done. But another one who was with me also has gone on to that office. And he told me, he said she was very relaxed. Are we on the radio? Are we live? I'd better not say too much. But the point he made is that he made sure that he gave her a certain course of study that she had to complete. And she completed that, and you can tell the difference. And there is Shaq, your colleague, who has also been trained, and you go to Hong Kong and you see these people and you see them working hard and smiling at the end of it. And I want to just make one other point about, and I'm using Hong Kong again as an example. Last night, I forgot to mention my husband and the fact that I went to Hong Kong when he was premier. But I have to tell you this, it is not a bed of roses. In fact, when he came up to Hong Kong and he saw where I was staying, because Hong Kong is the most expensive real estate on earth. So you live in an apartment which is the size of a postage stamp. He didn't say it immediately, but he said, Lord, Lorna, I was ashamed for you. When he saw where I was living. And I wasn't living in Central. It was Wan Chai, but it wasn't Wan Chai. It was a good address, but it was a tiny apartment. It had everything in it. But there's that side of it. And as I said yesterday, I think I said it to Carrier, it's those long hours. You're living across the world, 12 hours away. You cannot expect that you're going to do 8 to 5 or 8 to 6 even. It's like sometimes a 16-hour job. And you just have to like it. But there are those opportunities for young people. I just thought I would use those examples. And I even use Siobhan. Siobhan used to be with you. When I look, with you being Tracy at the London office, when I see Siobhan, I saw her, 2 months ago, Premier, I see a different Siobhan. So there is that growth for our young people. There are those opportunities for them, but they have to be committed to working hard. Once you make that decision to leave your family behind, you've got to work and you've got to work hard, and the reward is there. And it's not just about financial services or international affairs. Tourism is the same. Lynette is always on the road. I don't know how she manages. And she's always smiling and looking happy and helping everybody. You know, that is an example of the soft power of the Virgin Islands. That's what we sell in terms of our financial services and our tourism. It's the soft power. That's what you meant when you, you know what you meant, but the example is tourism and our financial service. A lot of it we got past because, or we succeeded in, was because of the soft power of the Virgin Islands.
Oh, so okay, well, yeah, you could have a question, but while it's fresh in my mind, I'd just like to reiterate about the hard walk. And I know Honorable Smith is talking about the time difference and all of those things, but I just want to make sure that I stress that at headquarters, it's essentially the same exact way. The same amount of hard work and dedication is required at headquarters, and not just in the missions, but at headquarters as well. So Kyria had a next question, I think, or she just has the mic to pass.
No, I had a question, but I don't know. The Premier was trying to say something.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
I was just letting you know that Dr. Pickering wanted to say something.
Hi, Doc. Good afternoon. Both premiers, I call Premier Richardson Hatch my cousin, so hi, cousin. I have a question for the board premiers. Probably before your time, I know you were elected in 2025. Anguilla experiences some challenges where the UK basically managed the budget for some period of time. I'm not sure where we are with that now. The Virgin Islands, as we speak today, we're going through a phase where the Order in Council is being lifted. These are both under the umbrella of, the Premier likes to use the term colonialism, but it is very similar. Any thoughts on where we are in the Virgin Islands, being that you were in Anguilla when your budget was being handled not by you? And Premier, any advice for the Premier of Anguilla, basically because we are on our way out and lifting the Order in Council? Thank you very much.
Thank you for that question. Just to give a little bit of a backdrop, it is said that Anguilla fell off the cliff in the wake of the economic downturn in 2008, 2009. And so for a number of years, we would have had difficulties. The UK government had to ultimately approve the budget. And so we had to prepare the budget, and my permanent Secretary of Finance is here, so she's well aware as to the procedure. We had to put together the budget, and ultimately it would have to have been passed by the UK, and there were certain parameters that they had put in place that we needed to be able to meet. In addition to the economic downturn, we would have had a banking resolution where two of our banks were taken over, were under the conservatorship of the ECCB from in 2013. And in 2016, we went through a resolution process, and that banking resolution process would have culminated in the existence of one indigenous bank as opposed to two. Of course, that came at a cost as well. And we were grateful for the support of the CDB, the ECCB, the World Bank, the IMF, in order to put together a resolution that we could have implemented. And I would have been in government in 2016 at that time, so I do recall the pains and the struggles at that time, and the obligations that had to be met. Fast forward to today, Anguilla has come out of that situation. We recently would have passed a budget, and that budget would have, once we met certain parameters, there was no issue from the UK government. One of the things that we were able to do as well was to reform a goods and services tax that had been implemented in 2022 to be able to specifically address the concerns with respect to ensuring that we had a broad-based tax and that we were able to meet our financial obligations when they arose, that we're able to have sufficient funds to be able to address situations such as natural disasters, etc. So thankfully, we are out of that phase. Of course, at the end of the day, once we continue to meet certain parameters, or we're in a position where we can ensure that we can take care of ourselves, the UK has little to say. So when I say that, I mean that in August, on the 1st of August, this administration would have implemented a goods and services tax reform that would have adjusted the GST that was implemented in 2022. And the reason for that was to stimulate economic activity, to ensure that we address the cost of living issues that have resulted from the implementation of the GST structure in the way in which it was implemented. And so that did not have any issues with the UK government in terms of coming to the House and being passed into law. It was signed by the governor.
And let me just say, in terms of any advice I have for Anguilla, I would just say that I think Anguilla's doing a great job. They are performing extremely well. Been to Anguilla, I was very impressed with their tourism product. They have, as everybody would know, .ai, which is just growing in popularity every day, and I know that it's become somewhat of a cash cow for Anguilla. So I know Anguilla's doing well, and of course I want to congratulate Premier Richardson Hodge on the reforms to the GST, which I know the GST did create revenue for the government, but it did create some hardship for the people. So to be able to have a reform that the UK government is satisfied with and the people are satisfied with, I think is a great accomplishment for Anguilla. And we were in our Caribbean caucus earlier, and I believe that because of the resilience that the BVI and Anguilla have shown, you know, we deserve, in my view, a greater level of flexibility in terms of the arrangements we have with the United Kingdom. And I think it's important for us to talk with each other, Anguilla, BVI, and other overseas territories, because some territories get certain kind of benefits and privileges that others don't. You may have provisions that Cayman may have, you know, that the BVI or Anguilla wouldn't have. Same thing for Bermuda. Turks and Caicos, I know, have been negotiating as it pertains to a constitution. So my advice to Anguilla would be the same advice for all of us, that we speak to each other, that we share best practice, that we don't allow ourselves to be divided, that we remain united, and that we see what we can learn from each other. Because, you know, when we were speaking earlier, there were actually great opportunities for us to learn and grow from each other, even regardless of having to go to the UK for anything. Of course, we have requests of the UK, but you know, when we really examine it, sometimes we can solve these challenges just by speaking to each other and assisting each other. And I'm very proud to be a sister territory to Anguilla.
Thank you very much, Premier Whitley. And just to say that the Anguilla has been blessed with a domain name that would have been assigned to us from the 1980s, and that today is now working for us. We currently generate about between $7 to $9 million US per month from the domain name, and that has 7 to 9 million per month.
7 to
US.
9. 7-9. 7 to 9.
To 9 million. And that has allowed us, to pivot and to put in place the GST relief, the GST reform. And so it's something that we do not take for granted. We are looking at ways in which we can establish certain funds to be able to continue to help our people, to assist us in withstanding the issues that may arise from time to time. But it also allows us the opportunity to focus on our people, to be able to deliver the things that our people have wanted for quite some time. And so we are committed to being able to do that. Thank you.
And I forgot to say, Premier, not to be promoting Anguilla the way, but I noticed as well you extended your airport runway.
It's in the process of being extended, yes, right.
Yes, and I see that you're welcoming flights now from New Jersey, is it?
Yes. Bermuda Air, where's Bermuda? Bermuda Air is going to be flying into Anguilla from that area beginning in December. And they will be providing that route for a period of 6 months during the peak season. And that allows us as well to be able to have direct flights in persons. A lot of our tourists are located in that area, and so it allows for ease of access to fly directly into Anguilla.
Congratulations.
So we ourselves are looking to extend our airport runway, but we're inspired about what's happening in Anguilla. So we'd say keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So we'll have the last question from the audience. I think Dr. Pickering had a question.
Good evening. Not really a question, a quick comment. Just want to say thanks to the organizers for inviting me, and thanks for the opportunity to make a small intervention, and to congratulate the team for this outstanding event. I just wanted to piggyback on what Honorable Smith was saying, and going back to when she herself started the London office, she didn't mention this, but at the time the government had arranged for a rotational opportunity for senior civil servants to do 4 to 6 months in the London office, which worked well for a time. I don't know what has happened to it. We probably need to revive it. I know Honorable Luz Hodge did do that at the time. I think it's something worth revisiting, Premier. Yeah. The second thing is that the late Premier R.T. O'Neill believed that one of the ways that we could build our country was to encourage travel. Quite the contrary to what you hear nowadays, people complaining and criticizing the government for traveling. But he believed that encouraging the younger members of our community to travel had such a great benefit to it, and he promoted it. And to also add, he was a proponent of attending cocktail receptions. Just last night I was having a conversation with one of the young ladies from the Ministry of Finance and telling her that the education you get from cocktail receptions or public diplomacy 101, you can't find it in a book.
Nowhere
you know,
else, yeah.
And I know there are people who scorn it and say that, them don't go to them things, but you're not going to get anywhere if you're not going to expose yourself to your own inadequacies, and that's where you kind of learn, and I encourage all young people who get those opportunities to do that, and to continue. Certainly when I was a minister, every time I traveled, I carried somebody else along with me for whatever the conference was, whatever the area was, for the purposes of the exposure, to help us build the great little nation that I think we are going to build. And then 2 quick little points. One of the questions that you had asked about proud moments, you asked about Premier, was when I was a minister, for instance, the British Virgin Islands was co-chair of GLISPA, the Global Islands Partnership. And we were the only non-independent country that was a co-chair. It was Palau in the Pacific, Seychelles in the Indian Ocean, and Grenada in the Caribbean. And we were a co-chair, one of the 4 co-chairs, and we were not just a co-chair in there, we were a proud co-chair and really punching above our weight, as the Premier would say. And we did, a tremendous amount of work as a small island state within the auspices of the SIDS, the Small Island Development States. And then in 2018, for preparatory meeting for GMC, we were in a meeting in London preparing for the GMC later that year. And it was the first year that the United Kingdom was actually inviting overseas territory to be a part of the official delegation to go to COP, which was being held in Poland that year. We were a part of the official delegation. And I remember in a meeting when we were discussing who would represent the overseas countries to that particular meeting, the delegate from St. Helena got up and spoke and said that she was recommending the British Virgin Islands to be our representative. And these are her words. She said that she noticed that whenever the British Virgin Islands speak, others listen, and she was recommending that we should go. And the delegate from Gibraltar jumped up quickly and said they second it, because in the environmental space we had carved out a niche for ourselves and what had become one of the voices on the international scene with respect to the issues of the environment and the climate change. So this forum, the organizers, both premiers, I think we're onto something. We just need to continue to value ourselves. I often believe that good things come in small packages, and that's what we need to continue to do. Thanks.
So if I could just wrap up, and I just want to...
Before you wrap up, I'm gonna take license. I want to thank Dr. Pickering for that as well. That's something that I'm extremely proud of as well. I'm gonna take license and ask the Deputy Premier if he wants to give any type of reflection. He's about to go represent Virgin Islands in the same climate space Dr. Pickering was just speaking about at COP30. They're going to launch Climate Change Trust Fund. That's something that started under Dr. Pickering as well. I think that's an incredibly proud moment. Any reflection you want to give, Deputy Premier?
Thank you. Thank you, Premier. I didn't think that, I thought I could sit there and be unnoticed, not noticed. You found me. Dr. Pickering, I want to thank you for the intervention you just made. You're supposed to be going to COP, right? It's a good chance that you'll be representing the Virgin Islands again at COP. Is this working? Yes. Premier, I think that a good friend of mine, Dr. Pickering, you remember him, named Omar Hodge. He said, when a fowl lay an egg, you should cackle, right? You just in passing, you mentioned you agreed with Carrier that the Ardent Council tacitly lifted. In my opinion, it has been lifted. And I want to commend you, Dr. Premier, for the work that you have done, beginning with your unity government and ending with this government in getting that Ardent Council lifted. And Gwilla, you haven't seen anything. I think that Ardent Council was significantly more devastating, belittling than whatever the British government has done to you. And you came out of the situation that you were in, thanks to the tenacity of your leadership and the leadership in Anguilla as well. And I think that, Premier, this diplomatic journey that you're on, and before I forget, Lorna, you got up and you praised, what's his name, Mr. Whitley? Ricardo. But Benito, that he is creme de la creme when it comes to diplomacy. I don't know Ricardo, so I can't speak to him. Dr. Whitley, you're brothers. And I think that you have every reason to be proud of the work that Benito and Ricardo is doing for the Virgin Islands. They're not doing it for you. They're making you look good, yes, but they're doing it for they're doing it for the Virgin Islands. Yeah. And as Dr. Pickering said, people they make fun of us in the House of Assembly regarding travel. And you don't know the benefits of traveling if you don't travel. So you can say all you want, you can talk. I just sit there and listen. I know you can defend yourself, you can defend the rest of us, and you've been doing a good job at it when it comes to that level of criticism. But the things that you accomplish on a trip, you can't do it anywhere else. And that's what happens. And I would encourage Premier Hodge Richardson, young lady, I would encourage you to every opportunity you get, make that contact. And you can only make that contact by traveling. Now don't leave your back exposed by leaving the country too often or getting too comfortable when you travel. Unless you have a deputy like me. But be careful, but travel and meet the right people and get your work done. I see that my premier, he's been to the United Nations. How many other premier can boast that they've been to the United Nations and making presentation on behalf of their country? And he's been heard. I can say that he's been heard. And the efforts that we're putting out here this evening, fantastic. Fantastic. This is not the first time I've been in this room on one of these meetings, regarding what we were preparing for the JMC. But this diplomatic week, is this something new?
Yep, indeed. First one ever in BVI.
You see what I mean? It took me 25 years to learn that, to see it. But the longer you live, the more you see. And I think it's a fantastic effort, and I want to commend you and whoever, all you who have been involved in it, for doing it. Look at the room. When I came, it was empty. Look at it. It's full right now. And if you had more room, you'll have more people. Thank you, Premier, for the opportunity.
So as I'm wrapping up, I just wanted to go back to Dr. Pickering's comment about the rotation with public officers being able to rotate to the London office. And I don't really want to preempt the Premier, but I think it's significant for me to mention that we are in the process of completing a diplomatic service policy. And what our policy will do essentially is it will categorize international affairs as the headquarters for the BVI Foreign Service or diplomatic service, and it will have periods where persons are required to do a stint in headquarters and then be able to be seconded to the different missions outside. So it is something that's at the forefront. It's something that we're actively working on. And I'd just also like to share one reflection. I did a rotation at the BVI London office when I was in university in the UK. And I remember the exact briefing paper that I was working on when I decided that, yeah, this is where I wanted to be. Dr. Pickering was the Minister of Environment at that point, and we were preparing a briefing paper for him to attend a SIDS conference in Samoa, 2014, I think it was the Samoa Pathways. That was the crystallizing moment for me that I recognized this law thing. No, this ain't really what I want to do. I want to use these law skills to be writing the advice. And that was exactly it for me. Later in that week, the London office hosted, I think it was a Premier's reception or something of that nature. That was it again, speaking to parliamentarians in the UK and different persons that were invited. I found my calling. I said, this is exactly the place. This is exactly the space. This is the way that I could represent my country, something which I am absolutely passionate about doing. And I think that this space provides the opportunity to be able to do so. So as I wrap up, I think the discussions tonight focused a lot. And I think the things that we learned were that our size does not limit our significance. This diplomacy, international relations, it's a lot about presence. It's a lot about our relationships. It's a lot about building partnerships. And I'm very excited to see what the future has to hold for overseas territories as we chart our way, especially in the diplomatic realm. So to our distinguished panelists, I'd just like to say thank you very much for sharing your insight, your experience, your wisdom. To the audience that has traveled from Tortola to be with us, to those of you watching on Facebook Live, thank you very much for your attention and your curiosity. May we continue to open global doors from our island shores with purpose, confidence, and collaboration. Thank you and have a good night.